won't be pleased. Now, another country is pretending that it is unhappy with some of the events which Ukraine is taking. So there's been a report in the New York Times that the United States has once again determined that the drone attacks on the Kremlin were indeed the work of a Ukrainian intelligence agency, that we are told that the mighty United States is unable to establish which one, which of course begs the question of how many intelligence agencies does Ukraine actually have. Remember, it's a middle-ranking power, not exactly a very wealthy country. Obviously, it's received an awful lot of money from the West, but does it really have a multiplicity of intelligence agencies? The New York Times story also says that the United States isn't sure whether President Zelensky himself had any role in the affair, given the Pentagon leaks, which showed what a belligerent individual Zelensky is, how, for example, he is obsessed with the capture of Russian villages in Belgorod and Kursk and Bryansk regions, with the plan apparently to try to trade them for Ukrainian territory. The fact that he comes up with these crazy schemes. Why do they assume that Zelensky might not be involved? Personally, the fact that he was in Finland on the day that there was an attack on the Kremlin, the fact that he suddenly materialized in Finland without any prior notice, to my mind, that is a very strong sign that he was absolutely fully informed and aware that this attack on the Kremlin was going to take place and wanted to stay out of Kiev in case the attack was successful and triggered some kind of Russian retaliation. So that's the one news report from the New York Times. It says that the United States wasn't happy with this incident. It considers it another one of those examples of Ukraine doing crazy and stupid and counterproductive things which the United States disapproves of. Except, of course, as I've said previously, the United States disapproves of these episodes, these actions, and does nothing about them except signal its disapproval with these leaks in the US media. And then we've had a whole series of very complicated reports about the Belgorod affair, also from the United States. We're told that the United States hasn't yet established whether it was indeed American vehicles that were used in the attack on Belgorod. We've seen the pictures. They're speculating that these pictures might have been staged. It doesn't seem very likely. In fact, it doesn't seem likely at all. But anyway, we've had attempts to try and pretend that this might not be the case. We've also seen reports that the United States would disapprove of Ukraine transferring these vehicles to a third party. Who this third party is alleged to be goes unstated, but presumably it is this Russian anti-partisan group which Ukraine continues to pretend carried out this attack on Belgorod. I don't think anybody who studied that incident in any detail believes that. But anyway, once again, we're asked to believe that the United States is unhappy with this episode. Except, again, if the United States is genuinely unhappy, it has a very strange way of showing it, because it does nothing at all to make public its disapproval other than plant these strategic leaks in the media, and it goes on arming Ukraine regardless, making itself in effect, complicit in this activity of which it disapproves. Now, I've already made clear the further damage that this is doing to US-Russian relations. I mean, the Russians see all of this. They must find this American response to incidents like this a further case of US duplicity. I know many people, including many people in Russia, and I wouldn't at all be surprised members of the Russian government believe that the United States is actually directly involved and implicated in some of these attacks. But put that aside, I think that perhaps, almost certainly, there are people in the United States who are genuinely unhappy about attacks of this kind. And for all I know, it is they who are leaking this information to the media. I've already discussed how there seems to be a genuine debate underway within the US political and military establishment, arguing over whether or not to sustain this war, arguing that the war is not sustainable, does not work well for the United States in the long term. And perhaps these people are highlighting the flakiness of the Kiev government, the fact that it does outrageous and crazy and reckless and dangerous things, and that the United States should not therefore be involved in it. It might not be a coincidence that there's also reports now coming out of Germany, which again appear to be intended simultaneously with all of this to revive the story that Ukraine was involved or carried out the attack on the Nord Stream pipelines. So I think that there is this internal debate probably going on in the United States, and for all I know, eventually, when that debate is resolved in favor of the realists, if it is resolved in favor of the realists will be able to point to all of these incidents and highlight the fact that they've already been reported in the US media as part of the challenge they intend to make to the neocons, pointing out to the American people how dangerous and reckless the neocons are. But let me reiterate again, unless and until that happens, these American denials spread in the media in the way that they are, American denials of direct responsibility, statements of American disapproval of Ukrainian actions, far from assuaging the Russians, are, I suspect, in fact I am sure, simply heightening Russian distrust. They must be seeing that the Americans say all of this, even as incidents like this continue to happen. And that must make the Russians even more sure that negotiations between them and the United States, be it over Ukraine, over any other matter, are simply impossible, especially whilst this administration remains in office.